It's okay.
Oh, they're
There's
just
no
like
crisis or
launching
anything.
pad, like, all right, big
They
deal.
always had to, they like had to do an emergency landing, and then the other one came supposedly to help and it malfunctioned.
What the heck is going on?
That's what Arnott just said, I'm like, that's wrong. But the kids didn't see it very much, it was like after school, like 3:30, so they don't think it's gonna be a big deal, but somebody's gonna end up posting it on Facebook, and I just want you guys to not know about it.
We have our designers. They're here just to answer any questions that might come up. Yeah. No, they're here for support. And we are going to keep this moving. We're here to make sure. If we get to 4 o'clock, we haven't got to the last time, we're going to cut it off so you guys can have a little break.
It's 4 o'clock. Out of here. Hour early. Team, I'm gonna start the workshop. Let's.
Yeah, who do you think got that in?
All right. Thank you.
No offense, guys. I haven't had coffee in 4 days.
Yeah, I hear you.
I heard it was your Ford, so
Little
it's
caffeine
justified.
kick.
I saw you guys.
All right, Mr. Clinch, we're ready.
Okay, well, good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. This is the facilities workshop for January 17th. I want to make a few introductions of some folks that we have in the room. They are our designers that are here to support and answer any questions that we may have. First, and if you could wave when I call your name, Ed Napier with Zaskovich Architects, Gary Cranston with Bentley Architects, Gary Simples with CT Shoe Architects, Dave Torbert and Joe Toth with Schenkel Schultz Architects, and then also from the school district offices, we have Ryan Adams, our district athletic director, George Arscott, our principal at Toho High School, Rhonda Blake, our director of planning, Kerm Grinshaw, our senior facility manager, design, and to my right, our director of design and construction, Dave Sharma. So we'll launch in. So we have a total of 9 items that we are looking to cover today, and most of these require some sort of an approval for us to move forward. The first 3 are our elevation approvals, customary that we take these forward, and there's our agenda. So we're going to talk about the Kindred K-8 first. And Dave, I'll let you launch in. This is our site plan, just to familiarize yourselves with the previous site plan that was approved for this site.
Good afternoon. This is the new K8, we'll call it K8AA, that's being built off of Cross Prairie Parkway. We typically do test fits for the approved prototypes that we have. This one worked the best, and this was the site plan that we landed on. As you can notice, we tried to stay off of keep our main entrances off of Cross Prairie Parkway. There's a significant amount of stacking to meet 20% of the population at that school. So that's why we use so much. We also took into consideration our typical prototype requirements, the track and field, a separate bus loop and service entrance, and we designed the parent and teacher parking to be in a way that would allow parents and teachers to exit even if there is stacking blocking the entire loop. So we felt like this worked best, and we
Is the parent
have,
entrance on the west side and the bus on the front?
they are both off of the same street. They are both off of North.
Cross Prairie Park.
Yes, to the west, correct. They're both coming off.
This
of-
one's Cross Prairie right here, right?
Correct, the main
And
one.
then there's a back end right here with an entrance coming in.
Correct. That's the main entrance.
Oh, that's considered the main
Yes,
entrance?
sir.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
This, we have to maintain that curb cut to Cross Prairie Parkway, and the expectation is only if in an emergency, then it'll be open to be used.
Okay, so buses aren't, because I figured that parents would be coming in one way and buses coming in.
So there's a
the other.
separate entrance for the buses, right off the same street.
So, and
Just
we've
for-
done these in such a way that we're, considering our car stacking as well. Number one, we're trying to stack our car traffic as much as possible on the site. We have increased the car stacking We used to do 4 to 5%, then we increased to 9%. We are now doing 20%. And we've arranged this in such a way that if we do have intermittent stacking, that it will be on that back street and not the main street.
Now, the only issue is when buses have to make is there any intention of a bus making a left turn to get out of there when they leave? Because I know if they make a left turn, they have to have a light.
You can't make a left turn here.
That's what I'm saying, so there's nothing for them, all the buses, when they egress from this district, are always turning or making.
They would have to make a right, correct. It is a side street, it's not a main street as well, so it is very low, expected to be low flow traffic. But yes, they would have to make a right turn in order to get back to the light at Crossbury Park.
And there is a light at Cross Prairie.
There will be a
Right.
Crossbury Park.
And that easy right onto Crossbury as well, which from meeting with the traffic department, transportation, they indicated that most of the traffic would be going north. So that works well for this arrangement.
Okay.
But we'd like to launch forward now and talk about the elevations. We have two choices. The rendering one that you see on the screen is very similar to what was approved for the Knightsbridge KA. This is the same designer, Schenkel Schultz Architects. And if you recall, the Knightsbridge had the business focus. We are also going to replicate the business focus at Kindred KA. The second rendering starts on page 7, 2 shots of it, 7 and 8. That is the second rendering that was provided by our architect.
So the first one was like very similar to what we're doing at Knightsbridge. The second rendering, the color scheme actually breaks up by grade sections. So even from the outside, you can tell which grades they is in that wing technically. So it helps, and if you notice, they carry.
Provide a security risk?
I mean, unless. Not really, it's just.
It's not
safe.
something that we share with the community, as with, our floor plans. In fact, we're going to talk about a floor plan for St. Cloud High School. We're not allowed to share any of that information with the community. So no, we will not share those floor plans, color schemes.
But the architect also pointed out and wanted me to share that the thought process here was book stacking, as in the library. That's why you have the slanted patterns with it as well.
I think, the second one is very colorful, playful, intended to excite the students to come to their new school.
You see the name of it predominantly too.
Yes.
The only issue is like, what we talked about another elevation, if we could lower that platform, it's easier for maintenance, because you don't have to have such a tall ladder to get under where the birds and everybody like to fly. On page 7, where it says Osceola Academy.
Lower the canopy.
Yeah, lower the canopy,
Yes,
because you have a
sir.
high canopy now, you have to have a super duper tall ladder to go out there and clean it and stuff.
Are you asking for direction which elevation we
Yes,
prefer?
ma'am.
ma'am.
Okay. Like 2? Like 2?
2? 2. Okay, 2 it is.
I don't know that you got everyone.
It doesn't matter, it's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I like 2.
So noted that we will lower the front for maintenance and also for wind turbine rain, so we get the benefit of that covered walkway.
Right, and then the last thing is the two, what I call them wings, whatever you want to call them, are they flat, are they pitched a little bit in order for the gutters to receive the rainwater when it comes down?
Yes, so these schools are tilt, and they have parapet walls. So the roofs drain to a main drain, and then there's overflow scupper drains. But those main drains will tie to a scupper that feeds the downspouts. And those downspouts will then come into the ground and tie into an under drain system, which will tie into the storm system. So we're not spilling that storm water coming off of the roof onto the,
And I'm happy to show you that one day, Mr. Melendez. The gutters are actually within the roof itself. It's not off the edge of the building. Because it's a flat roof, the gutters are spaced out in the center of the roof.
What
I
about-
think it's more of a downspout rather than a gutter. There will be some gutter in various locations, but for the most part, a scupper hole where the roof will drain to that scupper hole and then dump into a downspout.
Okay. All right,
Okay, well, moving on. Our next school elevation that we'd like to talk about is Rome Bridge, DD. This is our Ziskovich design, very similar to what we're doing at the Sunbridge KA and what we previously did at the Canoe Creek KA. It also has the East End focus Dave, I'll let you talk about the site
Thank you,
plan.
sir. So, similar approach. This school is located off of 19th Street and the future extension of Orange Avenue. That's on that corner. The bus loop and parent loop are separate. Same concept. We try to keep as much stacking as we can on site. We do have 20%. We kept the parking separate so that someone can leave leave during parking and stacking. We actually were able to pick up more like staff parking in this one off of the bus loop, which would allow our staff to leave on time. The site allowed us to have a future use park, a community park, which is to the bottom of your page. That's sort of similar to Sunbridge as well. As Mr. Glynn said, this one is unique. Again, we test fitted all of our prototypes. This one worked best here, and it has a separate classroom building and a gymnasium as Sunbridge is going to be.
Okay, well, now.
Yeah, I appreciate that one. I want to see what the city plans to do in the southern part of that. Because I like that idea of co-locating a city park or something like that.
Right, and to the bottom of your page is our future developments, and so we have catered, you'll notice the yellow line, it's actually sidewalks so that there are walkers that can walk through and get to school. And, I mean, we don't have an agreement or anything like that by any means, but it is going to be sort of play area.
Okay, yeah, because the reason for that is, see how like the car rider loop kind of does like a
Yes.
cul-de-sac? But if we know that they're planning to do something there, and if they're not gonna have a third entrance, then maybe we can have it turn quicker and leave it open there so they can connect the road. So if somebody's driving and they're going to the parking lot of the park, the public park, that they have another way to get in and out. Does that make sense? Like, you know what I mean, like my fancy drawing, if it went straight that way and then kind of connected up this way. So kind of like you could turn left but also go straight, because if you say this is gonna be a park here, they can get access to that.
No, the bottom of our site, it's sort of like for a future joint use if possible, if it ever works out, but it's on our site. To the
Oh, 100%. So
Yeah,
whatever
we
we do is
don't-
gonna be 100% there. It wouldn't be shared or co-located with somebody else
Right.
down the side.
Correct,
That's
right.
What I'm saying is, why don't we talk to the developer to see if they can do something like that?
Yeah, we're happy to engage in those
You know what I mean?
discussions.
If we already have a portion of it, and the developer has this part, because that's what I was talking about before, a long time ago, you kind of probably don't remember it, but the county commission, whenever they do a development, has to have like 5 acres for parks and recreation, and then we have to have site for us. Why don't we co-locate the county's parks and recreation, is what I'm saying. So if this development has to give 5 acres to the county for a park, why are they gonna put it in a different spot? We already had this area located, now we can expand it and do something bigger. And they can use and the county can use part of our property and have like this cool park place to play.
we can certainly look at that. We'll work with Rhonda to have those discussions with the
Yeah,
developer.
certainly.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Because the county's got to choose it. But if the county chooses it, why don't the county change where they put the, you know what I'm saying? Like, instead of putting on the west side of the property, we already have a little slither of land. Why don't we just co-locate the 5 acres of the county with that? And now they have like 6 acres to play and have like a cool place for kids to join and have a great,
Yes, sir.
you know, you get what I'm saying?
Yes, understood. We'll research that. That's a great suggestion.
Rendering, I'm good with too. I like the greens, sees them.
Okay.
I love that, and I know we met last week for over an hour
Yes.
on all of this to go through some of these questions. I appreciate your time with me. A lot of these projects, not just in our district, but moving forward. And I come from Canoe Creek K-8, so it bleeds right in with the theme, and we're talking about drawing folks to these schools. I like the second one.
And that second option is various shades of green that tie into the sustainability, environmentalism theme, the E-STEM theme that we're trying to bring into the school.
And we did lower the front canopy as well, Mr. Menendez.
And actually, that first elevation is very similar to what we already did at Sunbridge.
Yeah,
So,
Sunbridge is going to look very similar to the first one.
so I'm
And
hearing
I'm saying,
option
no,
2.
Yeah, option 2, but remember like what we said before, like on page 13, I don't know my construction terms, but they look like individual things. Again, I think we want it to be solid, because birds and stuff like that can get in between and settle in there. You might as well have to put like nets in there. Yeah, like on page 13 on the bottom right-hand side, see, they got like, I don't know what you would call it, they're like skinny
Yep.
little tubes that are like are see-through. I mean, that looks cool, but the only problem is, man, birds and everything else, I can get inside there, and you might as well build like a little net to kill the birds to put them in there, or to prevent the spikes, you know? but instead, just make it a solid piece.
Closer,
Yeah.
closer.
Yeah, and the other good thing about a solid piece too is later on, if we want to put lettering in there and call it auditorium, now you have a firmer base to put some kind of channel lettering on there to direct people for that.
Okay.
Should they need to change?
Do we have consensus for the rendering two?
Option 2.
Okay, great, thank you. We'll move to our next project, and that is the Transportation West. So we had previously talked about Transportation East, and we have the elevations approved for it. Let's talk a little bit about the site plan. This is a little bit more challenging site, given the size of wetlands that we have on the site. And in fact, what we're envisioning is a land bridge that would go from the first bus parking area to a second supplemental bus parking area. And we would have our fueling island out there as well. But Dave, I'll let you talk about the intricacies to the
Is
site.
that bad, huh?
It is. And so this site is off of Robert McLean Boulevard. It's at the end of it, and so we have to build a new road to get into the site. The timeline sort of what drove this site plan, because the mitigation of the wetlands would not allow us to open this facility on the timeline the transportation needs it. And if you'd remember, the need for this site is actually way more than Transportation East. We were just able to pull the trigger on that faster. And so what we did was try to limit the amount of wetland impacts that we would have, and this was the best that we could come up with. So we got a similar program capacity at transportation on this site as we did to East in terms of the amount of bus parking, staff parking that we would have, the same bus wash, fuel islands, and stuff like that, but we just had to spread it out this way.
And let me just add, as far as location, this is right where we want to be for Transportation West. As it relates to the west side of the county and being able to shuttle buses to the various schools on the west side. It's a great location. It's behind an industrial park. The other challenge is no one wants a transportation facility in their backyard. So this is very nice in that we're behind an industrial park and we're kind of out of sight, out of mind. Are there challenges with this site? Yes. But that's what we're going to find with most of the sites that are available on the west side. And when we looked at this site, we looked at several other sites. And this site provided, I'll call it the best situation. There were some of those other sites had endangered species that we had to deal with. We have, the standard endangered species, but not the specialized, I'll call it. We had an access challenge with this site in that we had to get 2 easements from the Toho Water Authority and the South Florida Water Management District. We have been able to pull that off. So we now have that resolved moving forward. We're in good shape with our design. Bentley Architects, has taken a lot of lessons learned from the Transportation East. One of the preferences was to do, when we were looking at the priority, was to do Transportation West first, because that was the highest priority, and then reuse the design for Transportation East. So we're doing that, but in the backwards order. So we are getting the prototype reuse fees incorporated into this project.
We did. There is only one thing programmatically that's different from this to Transportation East, is that this site has a data recovery center that's going to be sort of a standalone with its own generator, own data, own fiber coming into it and everything, and that was working with IT to do that. So we are not allowed to have our data recovery site at a student site, so this would be the perfect site to build that into. It's already programmed into it.
Good job making it happen.
Now, the other thing that we spoke about before, because I know the shape of it is a little bit off, but because of where it's located, not near residential, I was thinking about maybe putting a cell phone tower, because I know that generates significant revenue for us, to have scholarships and things like that. I know it's not really facilities related, but I know there's a couple pockets there, and since it was like oddly shaped, I thought it would be nice to carve out a spot for a cell phone tower.
I'll tell you, if there is a site that I would shake my head and a positive nod to say that's where you put a cell phone tower, it would be at a site that doesn't have students. So this would be,
Correct.
yes.
So if we can look at possibly fitting it in there, because we don't have to build it ourselves, we sublease it out to somebody and just collect the royalties.
Right.
You know what I mean, so.
Yeah, and, we can reach out to our cell tower providers and see if they require coverage in this particular area. You know, another thing that is key to the cell towers is them having their own access, because they're in and out quite often, adding additional customers to those towers. So
They're
we can-
changing the small cell now too, so I mean, there's not gonna be that many.
There's not a lot of towers.
Yeah, big towers coming.
Well, yeah, but we could look at whatever they need. The point is, I think there's some spots there. There's
Absolutely.
a spot here, there's a spot there in the corner, and corner, what I'm looking at.
One of the reasons that we ended up with this shape as well was trying to balance the wetlands, but we also tried to limit the amount of fill that we would have to bring on the site and still stay out of our floodplains. So that kind of drove, as a cost-cutting measure, trying to reduce the amount of fill, and we'll talk about. We have at the bottom, if we make the end of this presentation, if we make it to that, is the cost impacts that we're seeing from site work. So we were trying to limit that as well, and that kind of drove us here.
Okay, so our elevations, again, two choices. The first three slides are rendering 1, and this is going to be hard to see between 1 and 2, but 1 is more of the gray tones, just like what we had approved for Transportation West. So this is that first rendering. There's the second slide, and then the third, more of the gray tones. So the rendering 2 is more of the earth tones, brownie type.
So the difference is that the guy's wearing jeans in one and he's wearing khakis in the other.
Yeah.
this
The
color
first
is
one is the earth tones, which is very similar
okay.
to transportation, very similar to the Transportation East. That's actually what was approved for it. Transportation West, there's not much that you can do with a building like this, so other than using different paint schemes to it. In an attempt to keep it similar, but trying to bring it.
Or reason why they need to be, is there?
No, ma'am, just.
They could be the same
wanted to
color.
prevent two
We
options.
could do them the
We can
same
do
same
exactly the
color
same
as
thing.
Transportation East.
You could save the ink, right? And that we could front load, right? We can buy a bunch of ink, right? And have to buy, I mean, not ink, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't save a lot of
Repaint.
money. We have to provide X amount of attic stock for touch-up painting anyway, so.
That way
Yeah,
we
it
don't have to
would
like
be-
match too many other colors, you know, for maintenance purposes. Hey.
Makes sense to
this is-
standardize. I'm a big proponent.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Do we want to go with the same color palette as Transportation East? Or,
The first one.
okay,
The first one.
all right, so be it. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to our next item. And this is for our St. Cloud High School wing addition. So the need came to us to provide additional student stations at this campus. And the challenge that we had, typically when we add additional student stations, we try to do the two-story prototype building that you've seen at many locations throughout our campus. However, in order to do that, we couldn't site that on the main part of the campus. We have property that's on the other side of the football field, but the walk between classrooms would have been a minute plus, so that wouldn't have worked. So we came up with a creative solution to do a wing addition off of Classroom Building 3. Initially, we had contemplated doing 2 additions off of 3 because it's a U-shaped building. However, working with our designer, CT Shu, we were able to do 1 wing addition, so it keeps all the construction a little bit more contained and helps to keep our cost better in line. Dave, I'll let you go through it.
Thank you. So the site plan does show in gray to the left of your page where the intended classroom buildings to go, but it does show 3 other areas for potential parking improvements to standardized parking where we have grass parking currently.
And I'll make mention that we have portables that are currently in the parking lot.
Correct.
So when those 5 portables are removed, as we construct this, that'll give us some additional parking there as well.
Now, is an extension of the current building envelope?
It is.
So, now the HVAC and stuff, so if you're extending it, now you have to change the HVAC to give more powerful suction to go throughout the entire building? Or do you have like your own independent chiller system or something like
So
that?
we ran the analysis in the existing chiller system at the school. It has the capacity to handle the building extension. So all we're doing is building new mechanical rooms to just distribute the air to that. So we have enough in the chiller capacity. It's going to be the same fire alarm system brought over, extended over, the same control system brought over, and we're tying in the electric. So it is technically going to be a part of Building 3. It's all going to be considered Building 3.
You know, initially, we had contemplated 19 classrooms, and we've been able to get to 21. So, you know, that helps to keep us out of the portable business a little bit longer.
And I wanted to explain how we got there as well. We thought that we were going to come out, one side of that U is 2 stories, the other is 3. And so we thought, okay, if we got classrooms on both sides, that's how we ended up at 19. So programmatically, when we were writing this up to go out for an architect, we said we wanted a minimum of 19 classrooms. The architects came in and their presentation showed the rendering that you're seeing, and it showed the 3D diagram that you're seeing, and they showed that if we came off of one, it would be less interruptions to the school because we were working one wing, and then if we stuck with the full 3 stories, we'll be able to get 21. We do have 10 portables on site. We have 6 of them in the parking lot, and we have 4 in the back, and as well as a restroom portable. The intention is St. Cloud is projected to see significant growth outside of those portables. So if the thought process was, if we didn't do this, we would still need to add more portables and lose more parking. So this would allow us to standardize formal classrooms. Working with the school, we were able to figure out that because of the building and the amount of students that they're going to be adding, that it would make sense to add a dean's office on each floor. And then based on code, we needed to add restrooms in those areas regardless. So that's pretty much what we designed. It's not a lot in there except classrooms, restrooms, and a dean's office on each floor. It just mirrors it on all 3. And because it's 3 stories, we were able to get to 21 classrooms.
And we're adding electrical, mechanical rooms, restrooms, and another opportunity was to add dean's offices and adjoining conference rooms.
And it's mirrored on everyone. So the building, just bringing it out this way, it really reduces the amount of work or interruptions we would have at the school.
Now, did this go through like a school committee? Did like Mr. Fancher and folks look at it and
Yes.
say, hey, you know, because we could say something, but like, you know, what if they wanted like 5 dean rooms or something like that? I'm just
Yeah.
making it up. I'm not saying he would say something different, but
And the need for the dean's offices came from working with the school partners. They
Correct.
brought that to our
Once-
attention.
Once we figured out what this could look like, we sat with them and figured out what their needs were. So every stakeholder, IT, safety, security, curriculum, everyone signed off on the direction, and that's why we ended up developing the design down.
right. So if we say yes today, then that input session is done, right? So there's no changing of scope or anything like that
Correct.
after
The
we go
program
forward.
verification is done and locked in. We're now in production design. But we do need to talk about the budget. The initial minimal scope that was contemplated got us to a total project budget of 10.6. The additional spaces, the additional square footage, and some additional escalation that we've seen since the project was initially budgeted is now coming estimated at 14,177. So part of our ask today is to amend this project budget to the 14,177.
This is just based on cost, your estimation?
Cost escalation was a big item. You know, we had carried a cost escalation factor with this budget, as we did our other budgets, and it just wasn't enough to keep up with the escalation that we've seen in the market. And then the other part of this is the additional square footage, the 2 additional classrooms, the 3 dean's offices with adjoining conference rooms.
Will we be able to get rid of the portables then?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we can save money on utilities
It's
expense
the
and maintaining
5, I
portables?
believe, plus 1 or 2 restroom portables in the parking lot. And
there are 4 in
and
the
then
back
there's
as well.
some in the back that we would look to get rid of all those portables, which are currently leased.
Lease, so that we would just cancel the lease and save that money.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
So even though we're spending
Yeah,
a little
but
bit more
don't
money
park them too
upfront.
far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Part of this with the
Well, you know, we do have high school AAA
Right.
coming up. And as part of that project, we'll do a redistricting and, you know, hopefully, again, the plan is to stay out of the portable business
Yes.
as long as we can. We're always going to have portables, anytime that we're in a growth mode. And that's part of the how you address the growth. You bring in the portables, and as you build the relief school, then you pull the portables. So that we're not overbuilding with our brick and mortar construction.
So you had a very good question.
What was the question?
The question was about the little note at the bottom that says the paved parking areas is an additional $646,000. So that is, if you look at the site plan, it's the parking area to the top where the students park as soon as they get in. We bid that as an ad alternate because it is currently parking, but we looked at what it would cost to formalize that in typical parking. Now, because St. Cloud is so landlocked and we don't have a lot of area for retentions and stuff like that, the best that we could come up with that meets the city of St. Cloud and South Florida Water Management's requirement is to do this in pavers and concrete and pavers so that water can seep through. And that is why it is not included in the $14 million. It is not.
So we could continue to keep it as grass parking, or we could, change it to permanent paved parking. If we did that, we would look to do like a pervious pavement so that we don't have to add to the stormwater retention requirements of the site.
And it's a good point, because if you look at the amount of parking that we're formalizing, it's not a lot. But we took actual bids from site work contractors as an alternate just to get the pricing for it, and it came in at $646,000.
It just seems like to spend the $646,000 for that is acting like if we just have money to burn, because all these budgets are increasing.
We've been using it as grass parking for, many years. But this has been a site that we've really tried to avoid the South Florida Water Management District permitting to the full extent. And actually with, staying below those thresholds, we're going to be able to do what's called a letter mod, where it's a much more simplified process. If we have to go through the full-blown Water Management District permitting, there is no way that we would be able to hold the schedule for this project to complete it in the fall of '24.
Would you be able to add the additional 646 to another item, like a maintenance or something like that for?
Or a separate project, yes.
Separate project?
We could do that.
I know that you guys are on the schedule. Is that possible?
That is possible. But there again, we want to be careful. If we create, the regular paved area, with base asphalt pavement, that becomes an impervious area, and we would now have to go through the Water Management District permit. So what we're recommending is if we do some sort of improvements, that it's a pervious product that we use. But yes, we could do that at a later date as a separate project.
Thanks. Question regarding the project estimate versus actual, which is still an estimate. What was the time frame between the original estimate versus bid?
2 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tracks though. Okay,
Yeah.
I was like, did this happen in months?
Yeah.
2 years.
Yes.
But we've tracked the site work costs, and just site fill has gone up about 119%.
No, I got that. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't like a couple months and then we're gonna give you 14 million, you're gonna come back and say, just kidding, it's 16 now.
Well, and again, we haven't taken this out to bid. This is where we're headed now.
Which we did.
Oh, we did?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we have
These are actual
our
prices.
bid numbers.
Yes, sir.
Okay, my apologies. Okay, so, there's a pretty good confidence level that
We did.
we'll be good with
We
this.
did our pricing from subcontractors, so we don't expect this to go up at all, if anything, go down.
Also
It's
want to
really
make mention, this is the floor plan. If you want to see that building a little bit further, we were not allowed to include this in today's presentation for security purposes.
Oh, great.
It's just in your printed out presentation.
One more question about the cost or the bids. So they're locked in, right? I know we had this conversation with Gateway where folks gave us a price and then when they started production, it was like different. So what is there a wiggle room for them to add or take away based on material costs?
So if we've already been out to bid, we're in the GMP negotiation
Correct.
process.
Yes, sir.
We haven't negotiated the final amount yet. So we can look at that and see if we can bring that into the project, if there is room for that. Or during the course of the project, that might be another option as we work through buyout savings, unused contingency.
So this is the GMP right here that you're giving me. This is the
It is
guaranteed
based on the
maximum.
GMP.
It is,
Okay.
it is based on the bids that we got, yes, ma'am. We are still finalizing that to get to, hopefully, I think, the second board meeting in February. We're looking to bring the GMP before the board. So I think to answer your question is, based on the way we go to contract or the guaranteed maximum price contracts, if there is true justified cost increases by the time we actually cut a subcontractor, and typically there isn't much we can do because they still have the option of walking away. We don't expect that though.
All right, so I guess, is there consensus then for the parking lot? Because I heard a little bit of both. I mean, so are we going ahead with the 646 or?
I think we can add that to another project later. That's me.
So we just leave it blank right now, don't put anything.
Correct.
Just
Yeah,
leave it
just-
as is,
We'll
and then
just leave
later
it
on
as
in the
is.
future,
See how we do with the GMP negotiations, buyout savings, et cetera. We'll look at it from that angle, or as a separate project at a later date.
okay, I just wanted to be clear on that.
I mean, for today, we essentially wanted to get the budget amended to the 14,177. Just wanted to make sure that,
Mrs. Booth, are you okay? This is your district, so
I'm more worried about the building.
Yeah,
And
okay,
the
great.
student
We're on the same
safety
page.
there, so.
okay, thank you. All right, we will move to Topeka High School athletic fields. So the project was completed in 2018, and since that time, we have had various performance issues with the fields. At the tail end of the construction project, we initially noted drainage issues with the football field. An under-drain system was added along the sidelines, and that has helped to improve the situation. However, there are still issues with the two end zones. So, we looked at this. The bigger issues that was brought to our attention by the school was at the baseball field. And there was a lot of standing water that is turning into mud in many parts of that field. To a lesser extent at the soccer field, and to an even lesser extent at the practice field. So the culprit is with the materials that were used to construct those fields. It was from a retention pond excavation, which, when we went back and looked at the geotech, we saw we had a lot of organics. It wasn't muck, but it was high organic content, had a high percentage of fines, all culprits for not draining properly. And then over time, that material has further compacted. It's a hard pan clay, a hard pan material that is, very, it's very common for it to further compact over time. So this all equates to why we're having the drainage issues. Also, because of the Florida High School Athletic Association specifications, it requires a very flat slope across those fields, 1%. So you can imagine that if you're maintaining that 1% slope across a large area like an athletic field, that it's very hard to get that material to sheet flow because it's not percolating because of the hard pan material. So we have been relying primarily on sheet flow. And in the case of a baseball or softball field where we have the large areas of clay infield, clay is also a material that doesn't drain properly. So what's happening is the water is trying to sheet flow across the infield area, the clay area. It gets to the grass fringe and it dams in that area. And that water that does eventually build up enough head pressure to get into the grass areas sits there. It's very hard for it to flow, from home plate all the way to the warning tracks. So what we, in working with our turf experts, and first, we have had a lot of lessons learned with fields in the district. We had problems at the Celebration High School field, which we went in and installed a large drainage project with synthetic turf. That resolved the issue. At Point Santa High School, we did a large drainage project there with real turf. So the lesson learned has been that we have to do more in the lines of underdrain, and we are now working with a turf expert. Our design team has a turf expert that is embedded on that team for high school AAA. So getting a better understanding of soils that need to be amended. basically where we came from is relying on a civil engineer to do all that. And, civil engineers are very good with, installing storm systems, meeting various grade requirements, but not so much with an understanding of the soil amendments that are needed to have a field that is going to meet the school district's expectations for how the sod grows on that field, which is a Bermuda sod that we use on most of our athletic fields. It's a more specialized sod that has to be irrigated as well. So we're talking about an irrigation system mixed into this as well as how that field is properly cared for. So, when we went back to our legal counsel and asked, do we believe that there's any culpability with the civil engineer? And legal counsel felt that the civil engineer met the standard of care for, what would be required for that civil engineering. It was for us to take it a step further and really understand how we needed to amend the soils and to have that belt and suspenders approach for our drainage. Here in Florida, as you know, we get afternoon rains that,
That was legal counsel Frank,
that was his construction litigation specialist.
which is who?
Michael Hornreich, who is very knowledgeable about civil engineering and
Now, what
was
about-
very helpful.
Now, what about the CM at risk? When we hire a CM at risk, a lot of times we say, what is your experience building other schools? Maybe the civil engineer wasn't there, but wasn't the CM at risk for that too? And say, hey, I
Yeah.
promised to build you a $100 million school, because that was like a $90-something million school.
We did confirm
You would
that-
think they would have experience on.
Yeah, we
building
did confirm that the civil engineer followed the design
followed the
documents. So they installed everything that was included in the approved plans. They followed the specifications. So there really isn't culpability for the CM either. It really comes down to an issue where, with athletic fields and understanding more how soils are in Osceola County, that we need to take a more proactive approach on our athletic fields moving forward. Under
Was
drain
that just the high
systems
schools?
and
Is
soil
that high
amendment
schools
go a long
only, or
way.
is that K-8s? Because the K-8s have a field too, but it's not.
The K-8s have a soccer field with a 6-lane running track, but it's Bahia, it's not Bermuda.
Yeah, it's
It's
not
not an
irrigated.
irrigated field. Whereas the high schools are that higher level of an athletic field to that Florida High School Athletic Association standard.
Mr. Clinch, correct me if I'm wrong, just with the clarification with the board, because we have several new folks since this school was built. If I'm not mistaken, during the process of planning for that project, there was some VE that used some of the soils from the retention ponds to save dollars. And in the long run, we think that probably was not a valuable decision,
Yes,
so to
ma'am.
speak.
That's
And
correct.
once this project was concluded, because there was such a delay in the fields, we did reach settlement with Gilbane, and they paid, if I'm not mistaken, about $100,000 to the district as a result for damages for having been such a delay. A lot of that went into the cost for the football team to play at Austin Tyndall as opposed to at their own home field. But then there was also some dollars that went back into the Athletic Booster Club to get it started, because Tohopokalika High School had lost the benefit of a concession stand for an entire season's worth of games. So there was some agreement, we just did not at that time know that the baseball fields were gonna be in the shape that they are.
So what we're proposing, and on this slide, you can see the various estimates we have to remediate each of the 4 fields. We are proposing to do this in a 2-phased approach, where this summer, we would address the football and baseball fields, and next summer, the softball and practice field. As I mentioned, with the football field, we did install an underdrain system along the sideline, but it was not the full extent that we should have gone. We should have also installed that underdrain system in the end zones. And with the baseball field, our plan, our recommendation from our turf expert is to install underdrain every 20 foot on center, so that as water sheet flows, it's going to find its way to that underdrain system which will be tied into the storm system, and, we'll be able to vacate that water off the field. And, the other challenge with the amount of rain that we receive here in Florida, if we have a deluge on Friday morning, we want that field to be playable for Friday night, for that evening.
We had an extensive conversation about this particular issue, about how we were maxed out with the past storm to see what the chain of lakes, what the flooding does to that area, and even if so you feel that this is a fix to the drainage issue. I mean, that's a extreme case, but with the flooding and the water situations, which we have, the daily storms and things, but that, as far as flooding in general, this is, are we gonna come back here in 3 years and still have to do more?
Are we gonna get a warranty signed off?
We'll have a 1-year warranty, but this is a recommendation from our turf expert.
Okay.
And this is a entity that does high-end athletic fields, golf courses, et cetera, where playability is a prime factor.
I'm
Let me just say that, having dealt with this and monitored what was going on, the honest answer is we may be back.
Say again?
We may be back. Bottom line is that underlying land out there is wet. It was wet. And probably in retrospect, the recommendation would have been not to build there. But the reality is, I don't think we can assure you beyond the 1-year warranty that, I don't think it's fair to the board to say that because we continue to have issues.
I mean, I would request that the CM and everybody who was involved come back out of the kindness of their heart and help us resolve, not in the courts, not, in any negative fashion or some kind of adversarial process. I think that, it'd be good to have a meeting with them, come back and say, how can you help us resolve this problem? Considering that these are still names that come back to want to build more schools.
Right. But,
I mean-
but we can still pay for, well, at least from my perspective, I don't want to speak for him, is that we can still pay for the material cost. You know what I'm saying? So so I'm not asking for for free, just fix
Just
everything.
how can they help us resolve the problem? And they should. I mean, that's the type of relationship that we want with our construction teams, is that they don't abandon, because they come here for sure with, $14 million through $90 million projects. I mean, this is only a few $100,000. They should be happy to help us resolve this problem in an amicable fashion.
We're happy to reach out to the designer and CM to see, what principal type arrangements we could work out with them to, contribute towards the remediation.
Yeah, and if they tell us to pound sand, we go pound sand.
And, at the end of the day, it comes down to our contractual requirement. And, that's where we started to see if there was any culpability on the designer or the CM's part. As Dr. Pace mentioned early on, we did have Gilbane provide funding towards more of the delay because we didn't have use of the football field. And as such, we lost gate fees for those games. The football team had to go down the road to Austin Tyndall Park. But, we sought reimbursement from them so that we could remain whole for that instance.
And they did the honorable thing, right? And Gilbane's an honorable company. And so if we haven't approached them yet, it'd be great to have a meeting with them and say, listen,
Yeah.
we have a great relationship, you have a great reputation.
It was a very painful situation. I recall it well. We were opening a high school, and the athletic fields were not ready for the arrival of students.
And they're not ready now. So,
Right.
So it sounds like the root cause of this, what is the site itself, am I correct in that assessment?
I'm sorry, could you repeat?
The root cause of this issue is the site itself?
It is. It's the soils and, and what we can do to get the situation to work better with those soils. Rather than excavating out all those existing soils, we're proposing to do an under drain system and amend those existing soils.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we have to make the school up to par, right? That's the equitable thing to do. So I'm not as worried about this. I mean, obviously it's sticker shock and whatnot, but I'm not as worried about this as just in the future. Like, what is the mitigation process for your team and all the other teams involved to ensure that this kind of thing doesn't happen?
Right,
Because it
absolutely.
doesn't seem like it was really on anyone but us.
If it happens again, it's not a lesson learned. And
Right,
the
so
lesson
what is the
learned
lesson learned?
is that on our next high school, we have engaged the services of a turf expert
Mm-hmm.
that is now embedded with the
Okay.
design team to make sure we get it right.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
I honestly, I mean, that seems almost overkill, right? We didn't build the first high school in Florida, right? It has not rained more today than it did last year, than it did 100 years ago. Everything is the same, and people have been building high schools now for however long. And in my opinion, the people who built it, our team here on site, everybody should have really, that's not the earth didn't change. So it's just, I mean, we should have, that's an avoidable mistake. I just think that we should come back now, and everybody involved
Right.
should come back and try to make it whole, that's all.
And I think, I know there was a good intention with the
Yeah.
design process to get it right, to have a design that would meet our expectations. But we learned through that process. And from that, we learned that there were things that we should have done differently during
Yeah.
that design, which we are now doing on the next high school.
And to me, part of that is that CMA risk. I hate to push it back on them, but when we go out to bid to build the next high school, the AAA, whatever it is, then we need to put that in there as part of the requisites. Have you built a high school before, football fields that didn't drain, and look at that? Instead of like whatever criteria we use to select these CMs,
Right.
instead of us plussing up our own person and have our own turf expert, that's what the CM is for. I want the CM to hire their turf experts.
The engineer should have it.
Yeah,
The
I'm saying
engineer
if
should
they're gonna
have
be, if they want to build our schools, they need to be experts at building our schools. I shouldn't have to be the expert to tell you, I'm paying you to build my school. I'm not building the school. I don't have to have the expertise. I'm hiring you. I expect the person that I hire to be fully qualified to build that school and then hold you accountable if you don't do it.
Right.
And that's just my opinion from a philosophy. I appreciate what you're doing because you're trying to do a mitigation strategy, but I'm just saying, we need to hold our CM's feet to the fire. When they design things or approve of things, that needs to be in their wheelhouse. And if they don't know how to do that, then maybe they're not qualified to build a high school. Maybe they're qualified to build a K-8 because K-8 doesn't have the same field. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Like,
sir,
I need
it
to put
does.
that in our specifications and requisites, that if you're gonna build a high school, that you know how to build a baseball field or football field, because athletics are extremely important to our high schools.
And that's for future planning, as far as Toho.
Yeah.
We need to take care of this.
Yes,
And so-
absolutely, we
Yeah,
do.
so we have direction to go back to Gobain and seeing what they can do. Obviously, that, we're not asking them to do it for free, if we have to pay something additional, but if they can lower the cost a little bit and,
Yes.
lower their labor costs.
Actually, my notes say to go back to the designer and the CF. So
Yeah.
we will ask, as a matter of principle, if there's something that they can do to help us with this. We're happy to do that. Okay, moving on. Our next item, Neptune Elementary School parent loop. And this is what it looks like. So we've had an issue with cars stacking onto the public right-of-way, which drove this project. And this is a project we've been trying to move forward with now for 2.5 years. And as we work through the design, and what was different about the design for this one is it's being performed by the developer. We have an agreement with Taylor Homes. So they were the entity that hired the designer, and we had to shake out the details of how we handled other due diligence. One of those is geotech. We want to, look at the soils, or just talking about a soil issue at an athletic field, to, punch the ground and see what we have. Fortunately, we did that, and we discovered that we have large amounts of A8 unsuitable material, otherwise known as muck. It's highly organic. It doesn't have a structural bearing capacity. It has to be removed in roadway areas. So We have an issue where we have to deal with that. That is some additional costs. As Mr. Sharma mentioned earlier, escalation, we're one of the largest areas that we're seeing escalation is in with site work. So this budget was created several years ago. So with the escalation and the unforeseen situation with the unsuitable material, we originally came in with a project budget of 136. With the unsuitable materials and the escalation. And this project did go out to bid with our CM. So we are now having a better view of what the market will bear. And we are now looking at a project budget of 2,137. We are requesting the board's approval to amend this budget to the 2,137.
And we're amending these, because everything's amending higher, St. Cloud High School, everything else, right? And forgive me if I don't know which pot of money it's coming from, if it's coming from impact fee or sales tax.
This project's coming from the transportation, the quarter penny.
This should be sales, yeah, we usually use our quarter penny sales tax for anything transportation related, and then on St. Cloud, that's an impact fee project,
Right.
it's additional students.
So what is the impact on the overall budget? Because I'm looking at things individually, and like, yeah, just, we want the St. Cloud High School revision, let's pay an extra $3 million. Oh, let's pay an extra $1 million. What's the overall, what is not getting built? Or do we have reserves in the current budget that's eating it? Or is another project getting delayed? Because after a while, $1 million here, $3 million there, $2 million there, next thing you know, we're throwing out money, and like, I know we don't have a finite, we have a finite budget, Like, what's being delayed for these improvements?
So as of right now, those are the only two changes that I'm aware of that have been brought forward. The revenue collections are higher than our projection, so I feel comfortable adding these dollar amounts into the current year budget without it impacting anything else that was previously planned.
Okay, I see what you're saying, because what you project may not be what you actually collect. So what you're saying is the actual collections are coming in higher than what we projected, so we actually don't have to move anything
And
in
we'll
order to
reassess
account.
that when we meet with the Business Advisory Board. We always look at what collections are looking like monthly and
And that's for
revise our
both.
budget mid-year. We can look at that as well.
And that's for both the sales tax and the.
Sales tax and impact.
Yeah, because one thing as a rule of thumb, I like moving forward is, I would like to have the Business Advisory Board's recommendation, because if we start having a lot of increases, I don't want to usurp their purview. You know what I'm saying? I don't want just the Business Advisory Board just be something, hey, this is what we're doing, that's it. Like, when we have these recommendations, when we have these increases in budget, that the Business Advisory Board kind of looks at it, because I would like to say, hey, it's not just, is this increase, what does the BAB think? Does it have their stamp of approval, yea or nay? Because that may impact my ability, because I don't want to manipulate the overall budget. I don't see that overall budget on a recurring basis the way the BAB does.
That's a
And I want to
great
give them
idea.
some teeth. I want that BAB to be excited to show up to work, the
We
committee.
would be happy to do that. I think it's a great idea.
It is. Now, the only challenge is the BAB does not have the jurisdiction to approve.
No,
They make
just a recommendation. No,
recommendations.
I didn't say approve. No, we approve.
Right.
No, it comes to us, but I'm just saying, what was the recommendation? Like, when you say, hey, just increase it $1 million, did the BAB look at the budget and go, just like what you just said? Yeah, the BAB looked at it, everything else is on par, you're not impacting it. It'll just give me more confident decision when I say, yes, let's increase it, because I felt confident that there's been an advisory board kind of put their eyes on the budget
And
ramifications.
these items have been reviewed with the Business Advisory Board before they come here.
So we'll have that discussion at our
We can
next
have an individual
BAB board
conversation
meeting
with
to
them. Yep, I can add
determine how
those.
we can.
Yeah, and just have them take a vote, Like I said, it's not binding, but just have them officially vote on whenever there's a project change in budget, and that way we just feel comfortable as a board, and say, okay, this is how they vote on it. Like, all right, this is how they're looking at it, they looked at it, and we're like on the same sheet of music.
Okay. Moving along, we're running close on time, so I'll keep things moving. Poinciana High School Parent Loop, this is another project to improve circulation on the school. So with this project, we really did not know what the construction would entail. In that, it started with a very simple approach where we were going to remove 3 existing tennis courts, and we were going to use that area to expand the parent loop. However, in working through with our stakeholders, we were able to provide a very well-defined design. We worked with our transportation, safety, security, the school partners, and we now have a very tight design. And not knowing what that would entail, we were initially approved for design only. So we are now ready to move this forward into construction. Now that we have a very tight design, we're seeing that the construction would come to a little over $2 million for this project. So we're requesting that construction budget with project reserves and such would bring us to, and escalation would bring us to 2.9.
How many feet is this?
How many feet? Offhand, I do not know,
Did
but
I
I
say
can get that.
17,000? Or
believe-
1,700 linear feet? Is the existing and the proposed is
I believe it was-
4410? Is that what that says?
I believe it was like.
Yes, correct.
Yes, that's
It
correct.
it does say that.
34.
I'm reading it right, Mr. Melendez, Mr. Aguado. We used to be able to stack 85 cars, and this would allow us to stack 220 cars on site. It also allows us to leave a right turn only, because it adds a right turn exit only, because if you ever drive there during drop off or pickup, everybody's backed up onto Ponciana Boulevard.
I know.
So this project includes a dedicated right turn exit only that allows people to leave, so they don't have to wait on the traffic signal. We're intending to put people turning left only at the traffic signal.
Based on a 24-foot car, that would be about 6,000 lineal feet.
You come out on South Point Center here, right? So it'd be like a right turn lane?
Correct, right on.
At the end, the bottom, yep,
Oh, the
that's it.
bottom.
Yes, sir.
Oh, on the bottom.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have two exits. then.
Correct.
So you can go that way
Yep.
and that way.
Yes, sir.
They can get to the signal, or if they're going,
I love the
West
layout, by the
on
way.
Point
I love how
Center.
it's like one way this way, boom, you go in there, and each one has its own, like, phenomenal job, whoever designed it.
so we are requesting to add in the construction piece, to fund the construction, and to get us to a 2.924 project budget. Okay, moving along, our Kissimmee Middle School network cabling project. We've been working very closely with our IT department. Mr. Thorne is here to answer any questions. Initially, this project was envisioned to be somewhere around $750,000. But when the IT department got in deeper into the project and determined the true cabling needs for the project, as well as replacing several servers, there's some air conditioning that's being added to various MDF and IDF rooms. So based on that scope, we're requesting to bring this project budget to 1.170.
Why didn't you originally seek counsel with the IT department when you were building this budget?
So the IT department assigned the budget based on a scope of what they envisioned was needed at the school. So
This was
when,
your budget.
At the time.
Okay.
at the time, so when we,
Typical cost escalations, equipment cost escalations. And in the interim, we decided to connect Kissimmee Middle and Kissimmee Elementary together on one circuit. So that's also part of it, although it's a small piece of the monthly increase to do that. So we'll be generating some savings from that by eliminating devices and eliminating a whole other connections that we need for our electric.
So you just added to the scope.
Small amount, yes.
So what was the purpose of the cabling in the first place? Was the school really old and like,
So
you know,
there's very old cabling in that school. Right now, it's a category 5 cabling, and that is not the standard that we need for our stuff. So we're going up to a 6A, category 6A cable, for all of our IDF and MDFs, or the MDF that exists at the school. And that's gonna help us with our wireless connectivity, as well as our wired connectivity at that school.
and I guess later on, can you give us an assessment of all the other schools that have a Cat 5? Later on, can you give us an idea of all the schools that have a Cat 5 that we may have to
I have a
adjust?
list, and we've been trying to go down these.
Just like a queue.
Yeah. So we try to do one a year, but the last couple of years it's been tough because of the pandemic, and I don't want to use that excuse, but, you know, there's been issues with supply chain and stuff like that. That's
Hard time getting cabling, just getting the cabling.
yeah, very long lead for cabling, servers, et cetera. That brings us to our last item, To be respectful of your time, I'm going to go ahead and conclude the facilities workshop, but I will provide the construction market update electronically to all of you. I know it's been a very long day for you, and we want to give you some time before the school board meeting. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Good job, Mark. Good job, dude.
Look at the bad thing. He said he didn't even need me.
Wait a second. There's some money, but I think I might take that to you guys.